So I think we have everyone that's going to be joining us so far. Again, Michelle will be arriving late. So I guess we will call to order our December 17th meeting of the Budget Committee. And we'll do a roll call to order. Tom Bukovitz.
Sorry, here.
John Decker.
Present.
I am present. Sean Green is excused. Sandra Jones.
Here.
Michael Keister.
Here.
Tom LeVay.
Here.
Carol Martin.
Oh, sorry, here. That's on mute.
John Moore.
Here.
And Jim Stevens.
Here.
All right. And then I'd like to welcome our guests, Chris Souza and Nate Byrne, that will be presenting the second draft of the proposed budget. And I know I emailed everyone yesterday that we will be focusing on this draft of the proposed budget tonight, not really as much information that's in the rest of the binder. A lot of that will be presented at our next meeting on the 29th of December to have further discussion on all of those items. But if anybody in the Budget Committee does have specific questions about, I guess, just the information that's in there, we can probably answer those questions between some of us that are well, I'll actually direct them towards Michael and John Decker that have been on the Budget Committee for longer than I. But we can kind of go through some of those items if you do have specific questions. But again, I'm going to rely upon the superintendent to present those. Chris and Nate felt that we would be better served by looking at those with her on the 29th. So our agenda for the 29th then will be reviewing this budget as well as the default budget and the other items in the binder and the warrant article that's going to be proposed.
Well, as from regarding school edition.
Correct. Yeah, I believe Susan Levinson is going to be presenting at that meeting. Yeah.
Yes. And the communication committee that's been working on getting the website set up, which is what we've been working on mainly for the last few weeks, and now looking at other ways to present the information out to the community, possibly through Facebook, possibly through yard signs, other things. But one of the things we wanted to do was really present everything that was we were working on toward that addition to the Budget Committee.
Yeah, perfect. So Chris and Nate, do you want to start on, I guess, page 1 with any changes? And again, as a committee, if you have specific questions, please, you can address the speaker and make sure you address the specific function and object number and subcategory so that we know exactly what your question is in regards to which line item.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you very much for having us here. I do not have, excuse me, do not have the old budget in front of me. I have the current budget that was presented to you. And so I thought it would be great if we could go section by section. And as you have questions for each section, to please jump right in. And because I can't see everybody on my screen, don't feel bad about interrupting or saying something. Certainly.
Hey, Chris. So we went over the proposed budget pretty in detail with Monica the other day. Is there any way you could just go over the stuff that's changed?
I believe you went over the default budget with Dr. Henson.
I think we went over both of them. I think we went over the proposed budget first, and then the next meeting after that, we went over the default budget. So we've been over both of them. I'd be more interested in keeping things fairly, as short as possible and just going over what's changed.
Yeah, I could appreciate that. Yeah, we'll try to go through and mention everything that we know that has changed, and much of what I'm looking at has highlights and crossouts that can reflect that. But if we miss something, please don't hesitate to jump in.
Yeah, and Chris, I just want to address Tom LeVay. You had the question about those numbers not adding up at the bottom. I just want to remind you that at that meeting, I had mentioned that the proposed budget that was presented included certain construction services of $97,000 in addition to general fund expenses or capital reserve fund. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nate.
No, I'm just making sure. I wanted to ask something when you're done. You finish what you're doing.
Okay.
It's just so that you knew I wanted to say something when you're done.
Yeah, sure. So Tom, I think if you add in some of those numbers, those are not included in this proposed budget. So I think that's why those numbers look a little bit off. Go ahead, Nate.
So I want to just say that if you can tell me the date that was on the proposed budget that you looked at, because
It
we
was
weren't there.
11/24.
11/24. That is what it said on the proposed budget. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it up so that I can try to cross-reference the best that I can do. Unfortunately, we were not directed to cross-reference. All we were told was to go over the most recent updated corrected budget. So give me 1 second and I will pull it up. I have most of them on my computer and I am working with multiple screens, so I might be able to bounce back and forth, okay? In the meantime, while I'm pulling that up, if you do have any questions regarding specific things in the 1100 series, please go ahead and start looking at those so that we can address that first, okay, while I pull this up.
So one of the first things that's changed that you'll notice is the teacher salaries. And it's actually been reduced. And that is because we have 2 retirements this year that we're expecting. And we're budgeting to hire their replacements at a master's +5 level. So it's a bit less than what they're getting paid now. You can imagine people have been here for, I think they're almost 30 years for each one of those employees. And elementary positions, we believe this is enough of a buffer for us to hire highly qualified people.
And with that line being adjusted, you'll also see changes within all of the other lines that correspond to those, that being the FICA, the retirement, any type of benefits. So you're going to also have to look at your health benefits because we have to look at what your teachers' living were, and we have to budget for a family plan for new teachers coming in because you can't budget for anything less than a family plan for any new teachers because that's a risk. You're taking a best case scenario versus a worst case scenario. You have to budget for what is the potential, not what we hope we could get. So we're budgeting for those replacements to both those replacements to have family plans.
Sorry, can you just clarify which file name specifically we're referencing during this discussion?
So the file name right now should be the one that you were emailed, and at the top of it, it should say FY 2022 Nottingham Budget Master V.2020.12.09 Proposed Budget.
Hi, it's Lorraine. Is this something that's going to be put up on the screen so I can see it?
It
Can
was
put it up,
sent
Lorraine.
out.
I think the one we have is 1211.
And it
Right,
says
that's-
draft.
Yeah, that's the latest draft.
Right, so we didn't receive this, we got it in a binder, but we didn't get the email electronic copy of this.
Okay,
the
well, if
Excel
everyone
that
can
we
just
were hoping.
talk about what they're saying specifically, because I don't have it in front of me.
I'm going to email it. I had forwarded the email to everyone yesterday, but along with the other 30 emails I sent you.
I have computers already going.
I don't see
was
it, Tim,
the
that's
first
all.
to see it. So,
So Lorraine, what would you like me to do? Do you want me to share my screen or would you like me to email it to you?
it would be easier if you shared the screen.
Okay.
Unless it's.
I have it.
Do you have the latest version, Tim?
Yes.
Okay.
I have the
Was- As an Excel, Tim?
Yes.
Well, the totals are all the same. Even though this one is labeled draft, it's the same as master. It even says it in the document. It's the same as the paper one we got.
For some reason, I don't seem to have that email. Or it's like buried in something else. I
Like I
have one
said,
that's got PDFs.
I thought I had forwarded it to everybody yesterday. So right after I had sent another email, I received it from Mary from the SAU, but I'm going to share my screen here just a moment.
Mr. Decker, the timestamp on the email that has those attachments is 12/16, 9:23 a.m. If that helps.
From Tim.
Correct. There are 5 attachments on that email, and one of them is the proposed budget.
It's up on a
The
shared
draft.
screen now,
It's
so
called
we
draft.
should all have it.
Right. So 9:26. Is that what you said?
9:23 a.m.
9:23. Okay. For some reason, hang on.
Yeah, I didn't get
That
it.
one. All right. So the attachments aren't on that one for some reason. They didn't come through to my computer.
I got 5 attachments on that email.
What I'll do is
Yeah,
after the
I
meeting,
have.
I'm going to send an email.
Well, they have. There's 5 attachments that are PDFs that from Mary.
Yep, that's all I got.
Okay, so we were expecting Excel ones too, right? That's kind of where I was going. Is
Okay,
Oh,
I
these
thought
are,
we were expecting Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that Mary can't get those, but, and I know I'd asked Glenn for them, but he didn't. This is all I got from them yesterday.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I just, because we were hoping to get those Excel spreadsheets that were unprotected so that we could actually do our own notes and addition, you know, whatever.
I did ask about the unprotected spreadsheets, and I don't know if they're going to do that. But that's why he had added all those filtering options on there. But again, I had asked. I did not get an answer after the last meeting about unprotecting the sheets.
I mean,
Okay.
that's freedom of
Because if-
information. If we ask for it, then we can expect it to be provided in a plain text or
Well-
unprotected format.
Well, that's, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it allows us to ask for additional information for them to do additional work that we could actually do ourselves, our own analysis. So,
Yeah, I'll follow up with Glenn again. I'll send him a separate email and copy Monica on it.
all right, thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point? Tim? Whoops, I think I'm muted.
No, you're not. Just go ahead and make it, I guess.
I wish there was a subtotal after line 27 that has to do with only salaries and all the benefits. There is no subtotal there. You have to go all the way to the end of 1100 to see a total. I just think it would be helpful.
Right, which is the whole point of getting the Excel, that we could do that stuff on our own.
Well, I think it could be added to this at some point.
And so, Mr. Sousa, could you just clarify, you said that the teacher salary line was it reduced from the prior or from last year? Because it looks like a 3.3% increase in the,
It was
that one.
lowered from the
okay,
original
thank you.
It's,
budget.
yeah, Jim, it's $49,971 lower than the proposed budget, the last version of the proposed budget we received.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But it's higher than last year's spending is what I think the question was.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
referring to the last proposed budget. When you were looking at comparisons, I believe you were talking about comparing last budget you saw with this budget. What's
Yep.
changed? Yeah. So that was one of the things that changed.
So can I just add, it's the same number of teachers. It's because there are step changes and contractual salary changes in the collective bargaining agreement.
So is that like literally the only thing that can be done to lower the amount that's being spent on salaries?
That is correct. You, as a town body, voted on the collective bargaining unit last year that guaranteed these raises and these steps to the teachers. So at this point, that is the only thing that can be done. That was last year's vote that determines this year's budget on salaries.
So how do we do more things like this? Are there ways to push people into early retirement? Is there ways to fire people and hire people at lower steps or whatever?
I certainly think that having a conversation around incentives is a good one to have maybe with the school board, and we can certainly mention that typically when you're looking at trying to encourage people to retire, you put in a retirement incentive, which costs more money up front, but then again, to save money later. So that would be something if you wanted to. I would not recommend it now simply because the cost of this budget, largely due to the sunk costs we have. I'm not sure we'd see a big savings, but maybe in next year's budget, that would be something the school board would talk about if you want. Certainly, though, I can bring that back to them.
All right.
When you scrolling down, you'll notice, and I believe it was highlighted, some of the other costs that have gone up substantially that really drive this budget, and the majority of the budget drivers are sunk costs. You'll see the tuition. And one of the issues that we're struggling with the budget, of course, and trying to offset was the simple fact that we have more students in the 8th grade going into high school costing the tuition than we do seniors who are graduating. So we've got larger class sizes, and right now currently grades 6, 7, and 8 than I believe we have at least in the junior and senior years, possibly the sophomore year as well.
That's
So we're going to
correct.
see some of those tuition increases over the next couple of years.
And as Mr. Souza spoke about sunk costs, when we look at your 1100s, if you were to look at your 1100s, just in your collective bargaining agreement, your health insurance, your New Hampshire retirement, your tuition, you are well over $600,000 in costs that are out of the control of the school board, in the sense that these are sunk costs. These are mandated costs that we have to do because they're contractual. So when you're looking at that in tuition alone, your increase is over $526,000. Your New Hampshire retirement from your teachers went from the employer being responsible for 17.8% of it to over 21.02% of it. That's almost a 20% increase that the employer is now responsible for. And that's for your certified staff. For your non-certified staff, such as your paraprofessionals, your employer mandated contribution went from 11.17% to 14.06%. That is a downshift from the state government to the local districts to have to fund. It is a requirement and it is statutory.
Did anybody, I did not have the opportunity to attend the presentation last night for the school board, but I don't know if you could give a brief, Chris, I'm sure you were there, Caroline, I think you were there too. If you just maybe give us a brief overview of, I guess, the actuarial's review of why those costs are going up.
I'll give you a very brief layman's term. I'm going to go really brief on this. And if you would like more, I can give you more, or I'm sure Mr. Sousa again, because, you know, of his amazing financial background. But really what you're looking at is you have a increased number of teachers that are retiring and a decrease in teachers going into the field and paying for the retirement of those people who have retired. So you have less teachers across New Hampshire now that have to make up the difference to pay for those who are guaranteed their retirement, who have already worked to earn it. So because those teachers, now there are less of them, you have to pay more in to make sure you match that. The other major factor of this, and that's really truncated, the other major factor is the longevity of people's lives is more. The mortality rate has changed. So now people are living longer, which means they are taking down the savings in that account faster, which means we need to replenish it at a higher rate.
They also mentioned the return on investment is lower, and there was some bad planning back in the 90s and early 2000s that got stretched out over many years that we're paying for now. Those are two of the other.
So I guess the question would be, is this going to be sort of the expectation going forward? We're going to be seeing these larger increases, or is this almost like a catch up in 1 year to get?
So what they explained is every 2 years they have to redo it. They have to be certified. So they are going to be looking at it. The hope is that they can slowly fix it as opposed to an all of a sudden jump. They were pretty clear that they don't know that what they've done so far is going to catch up. But it is going to be an ongoing thing. But the hope is that they'll be able to catch it up. It's just not going to be instantaneous. I think the more that we look at our teachers not entering the field, which we do know there's a lot of critical shortage positions, the harder it's going to be. So those increases are going to go up.
Thank you. Well said, both of you.
Thank you, Nate.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
So
All right, as we scroll down the 1100s to the bottom, again, we have that new line of software. There's a couple of areas that we've added lines to just to clarify the budget. And they were in other places, particularly as we've increased the software reliance versus textbooks. And also you'll see a new line with our HVAC being pulled out. But we did make some efforts to reduce this, and as well as the musical shells, the acoustical shells that we're trying to phase in over years. This is not the year to do that, so we'll push that out. And that's the 1100s. Do we have any questions about that section?
I do. Mr. Souza,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned that the 8th grader enrollment and the seniors going out are different to the advantage of the 8th graders going in. I'm looking at the enrollment report from December 1. And what it tells me is, and I don't know how or if you're including the home ed students in that, in the 8th graders going into high school or not. I'm guessing conservatively you would. So there'd be potentially 75 8th graders. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
And then when I look at the seniors, I didn't total that. Yes, I did too. I got 100 and what? 79 seniors leaving. Including
Michael, where are
the
you getting
home
the
ed.
79? Because I see 63. We
Don't-
wouldn't pay for it. We don't pay
Don't
for home
count
ed.
the 12.
Yeah.
Don't count the grade level,
No,
Michael.
don't count the 12. Maybe I
Right.
did.
Yeah.
Because we're not currently paying for the home education one, so it'd just be 63, I think.
Okay. Okay, so so then
63 goes up. I replace 75 replaces 63.
63.
yeah, okay, got it. Question about the strategies there though. Are you accounting for, as home ed, all the students that we would have had there not been upset from COVID? Are there some that got transferred out to parochial schools or something that may or may not impact where they go to high school?
We do. We reach out to all of the parents, even if they're homeschooled students, just to get some information. Of course, they can choose to come in at various times, but we try to account for every single student, regardless of where they might be in the K-8 venue. Even the homeschool, like I said, we'll actually call them.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what I'd also like to do is make sure that you understand that, and I want to give a lot of credit to Mr. Souza and his team and the school board on this. Looking at your 1100s, if you were to take into consideration really all the things that are required to spend versus the things that were chosen to spend, it's really over 600,000. You're closer to almost $700,000, just over. So when you're looking at your total increase there of $740,000, that is majority is we have no control over. So the team, if you look at the supplies, Mr. Souza and the team did work to bring those supply lines down from where they were last year, to bring all those costs down to try to make it more affordable for the budget. There are certain things that we can't touch though.
I just add too that that's one of the reasons the proposed is less than the default budget is
Yep.
the supply lines are less, almost all of them.
That's correct.
All right, this brings us to the next section, 1200. That's the special education section, and I'll let certainly Nate, our student services director, take on most of this.
Yep. So what I would like to do again is I'm going to go ahead and go to the 1200s, and I'm going to say the same thing. When you start looking at your lines, the things that we don't have control over, again, are based on your CBA. They're based on your tuition. They're based on your health, your retirement. So you have all those same factors in your 1200s across the board. What you do have in here, again, as well, is you have the cost, the additional cost that would be any paraprofessional support that would need it to be done at Co-Brown. So one of the things is your tuition rate for Co-Brown for your regular ed students is 3.99%. Your tuition rate for special ed is, the increase is going to be 4.53%. So you pay an additional fee for any special ed students that go to Co-Brown to be able to provide them the special education component of their education. So with that is the special ed component is a higher increase because of the need. So really what you're looking at is, you know, an additional increase that you can't control. Plus you do have paraprofessional support that has increased based on student need. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that you have on any of those lines. None of these have changed since the last time I presented it to you, but I would be happy to go in now that you've had a little more time to look at them. If you do have any questions, I can speak to them.
Do those,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Jim Stevens. I was just curious if those percentage increases took into account the additional required paraprofessionals, or if that is that totally separate?
Those are totally separate. So if you look, I don't know what you have in front of your schedule. I'll try to make it easy. I'm going to tell you to go to line 89. If you go all the way over to the left of your email and or your print, there's a line that says 89.
Yep,
that line 89 says special ed para public high school. And you can see there's an increase because that was based on student need. So you have an increase there of one paraprofessional. Okay. In it's an increase in one and a decrease in the other. So your overall increase there was 34,000. That's completely separate from their overall cost for the need for special education at Co-Brown. And then if you go down to your line 91, I can give you all the sub numbers if you need to. I'm trying to make it simple to follow because I know there's a lot of numbers on there. But 91 shares with you the 4.53%. Okay. And again, one of these things is we really look at your new students going up to Co-Brown, right? So all students going up, all 8th grade students going up, we have to, when we're devising this budget, because we don't know exactly where they're going yet, we have to base it on the special ed students going to Co-Brown, which is a higher rate for special ed students than going to Dover High School. We budget on that. And then of course, if it doesn't get spent that way, it gets returned. So we budget with those students going up. Any students who are currently enrolled in Dover, we don't change over to Co-Brown. We keep that as status. Okay. So looking at that 4.53% is a separate increase from your paraprofessionals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I'm looking at, well, first of all, on line 56, I was just curious, how many special ed teachers are there in the teacher ed salary?
There are 5. Yeah.
There's 5. Okay. And then on line 62, it looks like that's been decreased from, I think it was 7,000 in the first budget.
Yep. So what I brought to the team, the school board, that there is a potential that you have a specific student need going up to the preschool, and we can't guarantee it. We're looking at it based on the information we get from ESS. Okay, that's early support services, and there's a potential that you're going to have a student coming to the preschool that's going to need a one-to-one. The one-to-ones at the preschool are run differently because they're part-time and they're fewer days. So the 7,000 would have covered that salary. In speaking with the school board, trying to make sure that we didn't completely make this budget undoable, right? We looked at certain things that we could say, what could we do? And since that wasn't really in there and it's a maybe, we decided to say, and it says right there, if this position is required, it will be funded out of IDA. That's why we removed the 7,000, because we don't know if it's needed. So if the student comes in, we will use IDA to fund it. We can't do that with a lot of things that are already in the budget because that would be called supplanting. but because that wasn't there the year prior, we are able to do that.
Okay, no, that's good. I just want to reference that was a change I saw.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that. I didn't think I had changed anything from the previous one. I lost track of that. Usually I try to highlight those. Sorry.
So I think the other change, Nate, is that the special ed preschool line.
185. It's 185,853.85.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was in the prior budget. It was 160 that was presented. So that is a $25,000 increase.
Okay.
Yeah,
In the prior budget, but not the one that was presented to you. That number's been that number at 185 was a number that we projected for this year earlier. I'm surprised that wasn't carried over. So I'm very sorry about that. But that is the number based on the current needs.
Okay.
Okay,
What line is that, Tim?
That
Sorry.
line is 93. And what that takes into consideration is your step-by-step preschool. The total budget for your step-by-step preschool is just over $370,000. And what you do is you split that equally with Northwood to educate your special education students your students that are in preschool that require special education services. And that's a part of the step-by-step program. I know that the school board has discussed what it might look like to eventually bring that preschool to your own district, just like your district's looking at possibly separating as well. So these are the different things they've looked at, but this has been something that's been in there. And I don't have the old budget in front of me. I tried to find it quick enough, but I felt like I was going to be bouncing back and forth too much, and I didn't want to reference the wrong one. So I'm only looking at the one that's in the one that you have now. So that surprised me that it wasn't in there before. So I'm very sorry about that, but that is the correct number.
Nate, how many students are in this special ed preschool thing?
So that changes because it's a rolling admission. Right now you have 8 students who are requiring special education services, and then you have additional students that participate on a paid entrance. And then that gives you revenue.
So it's costing like over $23,000 per student.
I don't think it's that high, but okay.
That's 186,000 there divided by however many that was. I just did it. I was like 23,000.
Right now we're paying 160, so it's about $20,000 a student.
They're not your only students there, though. That's what I'm trying to refer to. They're not your only students there. They're your special ed students.
Yeah.
You have an additional number of students that attend, and they actually pay to attend, so that offsets the cost.
Sure, but you can see how these numbers seem quite high when the average cost to educate students in the U.S. is like 12,000 or less than that, like 11,000.
Not in New Hampshire.
Not in New Hampshire, but that's just because you're all locked into these crazy union contracts and stuff. So I can't believe it's that high, but look, I don't really have anything beside that comment. So let's continue.
Yeah,
I just want to say you do have an additional 3 students that are on track to be in there. So it's a rolling admission. They change every month, and the number increases before the end of the year because the moment they turn 3, they enter it. They can't. It's not like typical school. The moment they turn 3, they enter.
That's our 1,200s. Any more questions around special education? Or?
Just a comment that the retirement also went up on line 82, which I guess is expected based on the comment from the previous section.
Right. Any number that correlates with the salary will also change your retirement, your FICA.
Yeah. Overall, our retirement costs have gone up $135,213 across the budget. It's a pretty significant driver.
And that's about a 20% increase is what we look at. Is if you really look at 17.08 to 21.02, that's about a 20% increase that was downshifted to local schools.
What was the increase for teachers?
Nothing. Teachers are statutory at 7%.
Okay.
They pay 7% in, and that's a statutory level. I want to say back in 2011, there was a shift, and it was found to be unconstitutional. There was a fight, and because it was a guaranteed rate when you entered it, they couldn't keep changing it. So it went up on teachers quite a bit, and then they were able to bring it back down, and it's been fixed at, unless it gets changed at the state level, it's been fixed at 7% for a long time now.
All right. So folks, right under special education, our 1,200, you'll see the 1,299 Medicaid total. And if you have any questions about that. If not, we'll move on to the 1,400s, which is our co-curriculars. And that's for the most part, other than again, retirement level funded, offering what we have now. Okay, no questions there. We can move on to athletics. And again, you'll notice the increase in retirement. The only thing that we did increase a bit was our equipment replacing, which replace other, which is uniforms typically, and things that tend to break down. The thing with athletics is that they tend to wear out after a while, some of the equipment and the uniforms, etc. After that, there's the Summer Institute, which is one of our summer programs.
Sorry, can I go back for a second on the athletic stipends?
Mm-hmm.
The original budget, so those are based on the teacher's contract, correct?
Yes.
And the previous budget had 17,000, and now you're proposing 18,000. Oh, sorry, I'm going backwards. Wrong way. So it was 18,000 down to 17,000.
Yes.
Okay, so
did
All
what
right.
that covers, did that change, or is that still covering the same thing?
That's covering the existing sports programs, athletic programs we have
Okay,
now.
because I noticed that there used to be, in the previous version of this budget, there was a note in here that could be for a skiing coach or skiing instruction.
Right, we were looking at adding some other pieces, and we're not going to do that.
Is skiing
Okay.
still a program that's being offered here?
We offer skiing as a recreational program through our Wider Horizons, which is a club-based system.
Is that
So-
a thing that parents pay for, or is that a thing the taxpayers pay for?
Parents pay for that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a tremendous club program that is usually either fundraised for or is user fees.
And so
And our PTA.
So
pitches
skiing
in.
is being moved, the skiing coach is being moved from a stipend that the taxpayer is paying to a club that the parents are paying for?
We've always had the club. We do not have a ski team. This was an idea to put together like a cross-country ski team.
Okay.
So we're not going to explore that for next year.
So I mean, I have to ask then why these other, there's $40,000 here for athletics. Why is that not all administered as a club?
These are our interscholastics athletic programs. They're not club-based.
I mean, what's the difference?
The athletic programs we have, we compete in a league against a variety of schools in our area. versus a club
Sure,
team,
but
which is
what's the
more activity-based.
difference between that and a club as far as, why is one being paid by the taxpayer and the other one's being paid by the parents?
The ski program's not a competitive program. They can just go and do lessons or get lift
Sure, not
tickets.
the ski stuff. I'm asking about whenever we're spending $40,000 of the taxpayers' money on. I'm
Well, we
asking
do
why is that being spent with taxpayer money and not as a club?
I can see the confusion. And if you look above, again, the co-curricular salaries, those are also some of our clubs. So some of our clubs and programs, such as yearbook, band, et cetera, are brought in or paid for through the co-curricular salary lines. The other clubs, like the ski program that I mentioned, and Wider Horizons has done a variety of programs, including archery. Those are all based on either user fees or we fundraise or the PTA is pitched in. Those are done outside of what you see in this budget here.
Yeah, so why not move all of athletics to that model? That would save the taxpayers $40,000.
That's I think the idea of user fees for athletics has been around for a while and has been debated. And that's a great conversation to have and do debate, but it's certainly not in the budget that we're presenting tonight.
Is that okay? So, well, I'm just making a note that that's $40,000 or so that could be cut. And
Yep.
then I wanted to just jump back up a few lines here to line 113, that co-curricular salaries there. I noticed that there's still $1,000 in here for video games.
Yeah, and I wanted to change the verbiage on that. I don't know how it changed it on mine. It's not a new club, that we have a computer gaming club.
Yeah, I don't think that the objection is that it's a new computer gaming club. I think the objection is that you're spending $1,000 on video games. That doesn't seem to exactly be the core mission of educating the students.
Well, if you take a look at some of the games that are out there now, you know, and such as Minecraft and some of the other programs, they're very educational. They learn quite a bit of logic and thinking skills, and that's why we support it. And we have a huge number of students who participate.
So, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, Tom, I just wanted to address the club versus interscholastic sports. So, club sports for like baseball, basketball, soccer, I guess, I've never been in one because I'm not athletic, but they're more competitive. So parents actually usually their children participate in the interscholastic sports as well as going to club. But club is you pay for it, but it's much more competitive. Whereas the interscholastic, there's still some tryouts and things like that, but since it's within the school districts, it's not quite as competitive, I guess, as the club sports are. So a lot of the kids probably wouldn't make club teams if you're talking about the tradition sense of club. Go ahead, Nate.
I also want to point out that this goes right to what Mr. DeBrio was speaking to, what Tim was speaking to is this is competitive, but also a way for people to explore when they might not have the chance to do otherwise due to financial means. This is something that the town has supported in the past. This is something that allows students who might not have the same advantages of other students to continue to play and be in the sport.
And then I just want to address the gaming club, because my son participated in it for 3 years, Tom, and I got to be honest, when he first started, I kind of felt the same way as you, that why am I sending him after school to play video games for an hour and a half? But it was not that. I mean, they definitely do Minecraft, which I consider kind of a video game, but they learn programming. And I can't remember what it's called, the name of it, but the basis of it is to learn that coding. And then they also do some Minecraft. It kind of goes in line with it. Again, I'd love to speak a little bit more eloquently about it, but I have no idea. But that's the basis of it, is it's computer coding club.
Thanks. But I mean, you can see, how this looks to the taxpayer when you're jacking the budget up 9%, and then in here you have thousands of dollars for, computer games and skiing instructors and things like that. Those are not core educational things. We have a constitutional duty to provide all educable children with an adequate education, but an adequate education does not include video games and skiing and cheerleading and athletic competitions.
I think this is just something that you have a different opinion on than I think a lot of parents and a lot of people in the town. And you've mentioned it many times at many of our meetings.
Sure. And I'm going to continue to bring it up because, this budget is like 8 or 9% higher than last year's, which itself was 8 or so percent higher. And then the year before that was 8% higher. It is continuing to balloon at quadruple the inflation rate. And, when we go through here and we're told almost everything in here is untouchable. This is a union contract. This is part of this contract. This is statutorily required. We're told that there's nothing in here that we can cut. So, that is why I have to question when there are things that we can cut. I have to say, well, look, here's something you can cut. Here's something you can move and ask for a fee and not put it on the taxpayer. So there's 2 ways this can go, right? So we can, as a budget committee, we can question some of these things that we are allowed to question, or the school can make some hard decisions. But this is something that needs to be addressed because spending cannot continue to increase this fast. So.
And Tom, I don't mind you questioning these things, and I think it's everyone has a different point of view on how to approach education and budgeting, and it's great to have it out in the light and people can have those conversations. And I would welcome anyone to come to the school board meeting when we're building the budget to maybe even engage in some of those with the school board as well. So if we're ready to move on from athletics and co-curriculars, we can look at into our guidance department, which is 2120, section 2120.
And to highlight those numbers again, you're looking at what is your contractual obligation for steps and rate changes based on continued education. So when you're looking at the 9.1%, that's not actually a 9.1% just based on the fact that it's the positions, it's based on the fact that they had continued ed and you did have some changes. And then in that also obviously changes your retirement rates at a higher rate because you're paying the retirement based on the salaries.
Could you please tell us more about line 141?
Sure, that's the guidance enrichment activities.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, COVID had hit us hard this year, but in the past, we've brought students to places such as UNH rather, to do ropes courses, to do team building exercises, a lot of social emotional learning. We've had guest speakers in the past come and work with parents. We've brought in, and Nate, you were instrumental in bringing some of those folks in. Their names are escaping me at times, but a lot of them were to help parents. We brought in speakers around drug addiction and anxiety and ADHD. And so it really was to work with, we identify issues that we're feeling in the building and what might be a support to the students, and then also what might be a support to the parents. And we try to create some wraparound activities that would to help everybody.
So this line item is the bucket to be drawn from any sort of activities beyond what guidance would like to do beyond their typical meet with the kids and help them.
For the most part, yes, that's all. Yeah, I guess it's all of it. Yes, and I made it sound like it's always about trips or bringing in speakers, but it's also, we have a kindness week where we do a variety of activities, and kids will have certainly little tiny tokens or raffle prizes on things about how many different students maybe they didn't know that they got to meet. So anything that we can do to promote kindness and social emotional well-being in the building that we might need some funding for, this line is for it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, that sounds like a place you could probably cut $5,000 if you're using it for raffle prizes and field trips and things.
Well, and just potentially, again, maybe not to that extreme, but as we are looking to places, perhaps, looks like the spend, obviously with COVID was lower, but even pre-COVID, it looks like it was, just half of the proposed budget. So, potentially there is a spot there. I'm familiar with those activities, and I'd say they're filling for the kids. But again, as to Tom's point before, as we're looking through this, if there are any areas, perhaps this could be one.
I do agree with you, and then we can bring that back to the school board. I will also say, based on my background, and one of the things that I look forward to for our students is coming out of this COVID time and bringing students back. I feel like we are going to need some additional SEL, so social emotional learning programming, and work with our students. So while that is a line that looks like we could cut easily, and I'm not saying we can't, we bring it back to the school board to look at that, there are some concerns that you have some additional needs that you might not have had in the prior years based on students not being in the building on a regular basis and having to bring in some experts to speak with students and stuff of that nature. So it's just, it is, I wrote it down to bring it to the school board. I'm sure Mr. Souza did too. I saw him write. But I just want to clarify something other than just, one of the other things to consider when we're looking at that number.
Thank you.
Well, that takes us into our nursing section. That's 2130. And this year we hired a new nurse. She is outstanding. I have to say, she has a lot of ER experience as well as school nursing experience, and which are very similar. She's just doing an excellent job. Particularly, you can imagine how busy she is now with COVID-19. We have a need to add to some of the equipment we have. We did take out some resources, but we've added AEDs, and so we need to make sure that we're keeping up on those. And then, of course, our EpiPens. And yes, they are expensive. But we need to have 2 generic EpiPens in case somebody does go into shock, and it's a life-saving tool. And we do train our staff every 2 years with EpiPens and CPR, et cetera. The same as with the blood pressure cuffs. And sorry, but I can't pronounce the otoscope I can pronounce, but I don't, the ophthalmoscope, and that's obviously in use for diagnosing students and not feeling well. And that line, of course, we continue to see the same health and retirement costs.
Yeah.
Then that leads us into, and again, stop me if there's any questions. Please, we can always go back as well. It leads us into our contracted services. I don't know if Nate, you want to.
Contracted services, what we look at that for, that's really your contracted eval. That is if a parent doesn't agree with the information that we provided with them, they do have the right to ask for what is called an independent educational evaluation. We try not to do that often because we also don't need to take into their consideration the outside agencies. We have to just consider it, and they are extremely expensive. We put a very low number in there. I will tell you that in my experience, the average outside evaluation, so independent educational evaluation, is typically anywhere between $2,000 to $6,000. So and that's for one. And we work our hardest to make sure that we work with families to get them to understand what our numbers are, why we are giving them the things that we are, why we're explaining it the way we are. Because if we can't come to a consensus of agreement, what winds up happening is they can request that, we can try to deny it, but if they wind up going to the state, in what would be called the due process issue, sometimes the state will say, no, go ahead and give it to them. And what winds up happening is when they go out of the district, they wind up going to doctors, and doctors charge much higher rates than our school psychologist. So neurologist, pathologist, anything like that, that they would go to get these independent educational evaluations. So the 600 is a drop in the bucket. It's something to put there just in case. The hope is that we don't have to use it, and we haven't for a few years now.
Thank you. So this again moves on to our speech program. And again, you see all the increases are due to personnel.
I'd like to go back to contracted too, because there is one other thing I'd like to speak to. Sometimes we actually have to contract too, because we don't have what is required. We might not someone who in the district can give that test. A visual, if we don't have someone who can give a test for the visually impaired or someone who is deaf, we might have to have someone come in. So sometimes we will utilize that line on our own behalf as well. I want to clarify that. Sorry.
Was that line 164?
For the contracted eval, no, that's 170. It's only 600.
I was going to say that it seems to me that 164 may be under budgeted based on your actual expenses for the last 2 years.
Yeah, there's a change in student need.
Okay.
Okay. As of right now, it's based on change in student need. The students' need has gone down as they become more proficient.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
And again, we try to really make sure that we're budgeting for in the moment, not just sliding numbers over. And our staff has done a great job. Under speech, supplies has gone up a little bit, again, based on student need. We have some need for some nonverbal tools, or for tools for students who may be nonverbal.
And going back to the same thing, your salaries will change what is required for your retirement and your FICA. And also you'll see that there's a change in your healthcare there, and that's solely because of life changes in families.
On the salary line, 7.8% increase, I take it wasn't just a step increase and a cost of living increase. It may have been a lateral track change.
Correct.
Okay.
You had teachers who continue, and you had that throughout your entire budget with your
Right.
guidance as well. You had teachers who took courses and they moved from, say, when you're looking at speech, it's usually a master's. So they moved from master's to master's 15 or master's plus 30. So they had 30 additional credits. So they have increased their ability to support your students. So for that,
I might suggest in the future that these salary lines, if you have people that are moving laterally on the track system, that you maybe have a number of how many that did, so that we're not looking at just a % increase that looks outrageous. Some of that can be explained by lateral movement. I think it would be helppful.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, how many teachers were in that, for that line?
I'm talking about all the salary lines.
No, I know, but how, this one has no note at all, so,
Yeah, there's 2 teachers
There's
in that
2?
line.
okay, yeah, because
And,
it
top
was
of my
nice
road,
when you had at least something.
okay. Thank you for that. I'll bring that back to the SAU, and we will work with the business office to try to get additional notes put in there before your final.
Yeah, that was the same with the guidance department as well. We have 2 staff members.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Go down to our contracted services around physical therapy and our occupational therapy. And our physical therapy is part-time contracted through an agency, and we contract through the SAU for our occupational therapist, who is full-time with us and works with our variety of our students, not just those who require specific services, but to intervene with the young students through our RTI process to avoid any kind of more significant OT issues in the future.
And what I'd like to point out is that contracted occupational therapy is the entire package. That is retirement, healthcare, FICA, that's everything that individual gets. So you have to put that in because you are contracting with them, so you don't break it out. It's one flat fee for that person, and that's all of their benefits. It's not a salary, it's everything included.
That's the beauty of a contract.
Yes.
The next section, which is our improvement of instruction, you'll notice that there's a $2,000 increase in the rather long-named curriculum resource development stipend line there. That corresponds to the in-service training line just below it, number 5322. I moved $2,000 from the in-service training to that line, basically based on the fact that we have more of a need to do some training this summer than we would throughout, I believe, the year. So the in-service training often is done throughout the year. When we have 2 days built in for teacher workshops, or one at the beginning of the year, whereas the summertime allows us more flexibility for time. And with the new tools that we've learned, we know that we're going to have an increase in need for time to learn. And so that's where the 2,000 came from.
So who's this going to a particular employee? I mean, is this someone that's being hired to do this curriculum development stuff?
We pay our teachers a stipend over the summer, so they apply for it, and we divvy up hours. And what we find is we might have one teacher who's looking to do some curriculum work, rewriting their curriculum, adding different standards, or learning a new skill, or another teacher who's going to be doing some technology work or some overhauls of some of the equipment we might have, and seeing how they can work into their curriculum. And they'll apply for it. We might award them 6 hours, and what we're finding is we might be paying them for 6 hours, but they're putting in 12 hours worth of work. So it becomes more of a token, but we've been able to accomplish quite a bit.
So this is essentially extra salary for teachers, right?
Correct. To work in the summer when they're not contracted.
Is that reflected in this binder here? I noticed in the back here there's a what was it called? Staff list salaries, and so it has the salaries and the total compensation and everybody in here. So these salaries, I don't know what the average is on this. I would say it's probably in the $60,000 something range. Am I correct about that for the average teacher salary here?
I haven't done the math.
So, yeah, what I would say is you'd want to look at your CBA. Your CBA tells you what your salaries are based on your teachers' tracks and steps. And I will tell you that that compensation does any compensation that's found in this line is not included in that. The compensation that you're referring to in that is their contractual obligation that they get yearly, because that is not something that we can project on what they need. So we're telling you what they received based on their contract.
So this is essentially it looks like the average is somewhere in the $60,000 range for salary, and then total compensation looks like if I had to guess, I would say around 100,000 or so. But this does not reflect the summer stipends for curriculum development.
Correct, because we don't know who's going to be getting the stipends at the time. As I mentioned, there's an application process.
Okay, so I mean, I have to ask. I mean, these would be considered pretty good salaries, even if these were for the whole year. But you're telling me these are 9-month salaries?
Yes, we don't contract teachers for the summer.
Okay,
For those months.
so they continue to get paid in the summer different than this. So the real numbers are even higher than this, essentially.
Nope, the numbers you see are their salaries for the job.
Well, yes,
they're hired to
but
do.
total compensation.
And these, well, depends on who gets the money. But whether you're a
Right.
coach, running a club, or doing this work, there are always a variety of ways to where stipends are handed out. Or given
Yeah.
out.
So there seems to be like between this one and the next item here for instruction and curriculum development total and an improvement of instruction, that looks like it's about $210,000. And then I don't know, there's how many teachers on this list?
I'm sorry, can you explain the 210,000?
Oh, I'm looking at line 197 and 209. I assume 209, that instruction and curriculum development total, is that also?
No,
That's one,
our
that's a
curriculum
position.
director.
That's a position. Okay.
So that's
So
our,
I mean, should we not just be requiring this curriculum development stuff as part of the teacher's employment? I mean, it sounds like it's a core function of the job.
this is for stipends for the teachers to go above and beyond what they normally would do throughout the school year.
I mean, shouldn't that just be expected of them though? If this is
This is a stipend that pays for them to go above and beyond what they normally are expected for in the school year. This is not what they would normally do. We do
Okay.
have high expectations for our staff throughout the school year. This would be work in addition to.
Okay, so this $82,000, this is above and beyond what the teachers are normally expected to do. So
that stipend
if it's
line
above
was-
and beyond what what is necessary and what teachers are required to do and everything, then I have to ask, like, why don't we get rid of that? That sounds like a place you can cut some stuff. Is this required spending? Is this part of a contract?
No, as you scroll down the lines in this area, you'll see that tuition reimbursement and staff development workshops are contractual. We don't put in the totality or the total number that teachers are actually that are in the contract, because we know that not everyone's going to be taking courses. So this is based on a running average over the last 5 years and what our expected costs would be.
So this is more untouchable stuff then.
So some of this is contract bound and some of it's not.
Would this be the same as if a teacher she has a normal salary for the course of the year, but then teaches summer school? She gets extra money to do that, right?
Exactly. Correct.
Correct.
That's what my wife did for Exeter. She used to run the summer school program. So she had her teacher salary, but then she was contracted to work 5 hours a day, 4 days a week over a course of 8 weeks or 10 weeks in order to run the summer school program for the high school. That's what this money is going for, right?
Correct. And it's going beyond that too. What I would like to point out
To
is
get an idea. I just want to make sure I'm on that same page.
you are. And what I'd like to point out are those funds that we're looking at for curriculum development. Those funds have helped your school to become a top 5 in the state middle school and a top 25 school for a K-8. So utilizing those funds is what pushes your school to the next level in your state and continues to increase your student outcome. So while you're saying this is something that's required, it really isn't based on their contract, and this really is what's driving your student success. These are the extra parts that your staff does. And as Mr. Souza had said, while we might pay them for 6 hours, in all actuality, they're probably working much more than that over the summer to make sure that their students are successful. Otherwise, your school wouldn't be in the top 25 and top 5.
In addition to this number, we match it with grants. So our staff is putting in a tremendous amount of time, but we don't rely only on taxpayer funding to support that work.
So in short, this is a pretty good deal for us.
This is probably the biggest bang for the buck that we have.
Do we know or have a projected estimate of like how much grant money we're going to be getting for the school? Just because I know COVID relief, like free lunch, free lunches and things like that. Do we know how? I mean, I know it's only half of the school year.
So at this point in time, for this year, we don't know necessarily next year's projected lines. We do have some 2-year grants, but most of the federal grants we have are year to year, and we have them in, and we typically get anywhere from say 30,000 to 40,000 in Title I, depending on the federal subsidies, 25,000 for Title II, maybe $10,000 for Title IV, and then perhaps our REAP grant can come in anywhere from say $5,000 to $15,000. Some of those again are 2-year grants, so it takes 2 years to spend them. And then of course the COVID grants are all separate for this year.
Sure.
And we did receive one of the benefits of the recent COVID grant, the SRFS2 grant, was we were able to move $80,000 worth of technology out of this budget, and into that grant. So we've tried to use our current grants to offset spending this year so that we could have money to go back to the taxpayers, as well as for next year's budgets.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. So as Tom mentions, the line below us goes into the curriculum and development instruction in total, and that is our curriculum director. And other than workshop and dues, it's all salary and benefits.
And so are they a required position for the school to have?
Required by who?
Union contracts, statutories, all these different things.
Yeah, this is it's not a union position. This is an administrative position. So it's not in the contract, not in the teacher contract.
Is this something, if the school had to cut the budget, this is someplace they could cut from?
Well, you could cut it. You could cut from a variety of places, Tom. This is not something that I certainly would recommend cutting. Again, I think this has added to our ability to not only become a school of distinction, but also 7 years ago, prior to this, my coming here and this position being added, we were a school in need of improvement. So we've gone in the last 7 years working with this position, the person in this position, from that in the state to one of the top schools. And I credit that largely with the work that our current curriculum director has done.
Well, 7 years ago, our taxes were a lot lower too. So there's that as well.
Yes, yep. Everything's a trade-off, I suppose. We have a library on the next line. That's 2220.
And the decrease you'll see in that, that's one of the lines you'll see decreased, where you actually see the retirement decrease to a portion, as well as your healthcare, and that is due to a staff change. So you're seeing a decrease there, and it's not that's the only time you really see the decrease over your healthcare, the decrease over your retirement, and decrease over your FICA, and that's because the staff member has changed and the salary is lower. And that is another thing to keep in mind when we talk about these sunk costs. Your GSMR, your guaranteed maximum rate for your plans, is about 3% right now. So that's what we have to budget for. So that's another factor that we can't control. But in this case, it is a decrease.
There's an overall decrease in our library media total. Underneath that, in section 2225, this is our technology director and our technology section. The top half of that is our director. The bottom half of that is supplies, software, and certainly the internet access is probably the biggest jump in the software lines that we see. The internet connection, and I think we did talk about that the last time, was due to our push from a 100 megabytes to a 300 megabytes line. And because we're in a 3-year contract with them, that was the contracted rate to get to that position, to that number. We expect that after next year, when we're in a new contract, we'll be able to negotiate a much, much better contract for us. And we'll see that go down. The software below, we've been working over the last several years to move lines into areas that they're more suited for. So for more visibility, the state 2 years ago reshuffled a lot of the lines that allow them to do that. So we're seeing more software being recognized for software in the technology line versus being mixed in a variety of places, such as the principal lines. So if you have any questions about those, our one call now is our alert system that allows us to contact, text, phone, or email anyone in the community from our school community. And our Sonic Wall is one of our firewall pieces. And again, our Enforce 911 is an emergency situation software, and Zoom. Well, I think you're all familiar with Zoom, and that's for our teacher licenses.
I had a question on the internet access line.
Sure.
I can't see the 240, I guess.
Mhm.
Have we looked at what's the cost of breaking the contract, and is there some early termination, and does it warrant doing that and getting it at the lower cost earlier?
I have not looked at breaking the contract. I don't think they would allow us to negotiate a lower price if we were to break this contract. But I can certainly contact Consolidated and find out.
I guess is Consolidated the only provider?
Yes.
Okay.
That works with our school. I'm not sure who sold them.
There's no Comcast doesn't serve the school?
I think Comcast stopped serving the school with internet line, but that's the only one we deal with right now is Consolidated.
Is there a reason that they can't get Comcast? I mean, it's on the same cable network as the rest of the town, isn't it?
So I will look into what it would cost to break that contract.
Because I mean, if you go to Comcast, Comcast may pay for the cost to break the contract to get a new customer.
Yep. Well, I wrote that down. I'll check into that. And
Wrote it down as well, Mr. Souza.
then you see we did tech equipment and the tech replacement equipment line, which is line 244. That's again, we moved a lot of equipment out of that line. And then of course we did make some other reductions after we last spoke in the software below.
And that's basically reflected by the crossed out lines, the crossed out
sir.
words.
Yes, John.
Thank you.
I have one other question about the software items, and are those yearly costs, and will those play with whatever the new phone system is that's being looked at, or will there be new costs associated with that phone system to make the Enforce 911 and so forth work with that?
Yeah, these are all yearly costs. They're subscriptions, or of course we have to pay every year. Occasionally, such as the Aero Hub wireless update, that's every 2 years. It kind of depends on when that company decides to release a new version of it. As far as the phone system, we crossed out, we took out the $13,000 or so that we were looking at for updating our phone system, the VoIP technology piece. So all this would work with what we have. And again, it's something we do think we need, and we'll be looking at either other resources to fund that, or possibly down the road in the future.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Under the technology line, there's a school board section. And of note was that $1,440 that we were paying, and we did find out that was for a person who was going to be, that was a stipend for people who were going to be coming in and filming the school board meetings on cable.
So the school board salary is that $18,000 there. Is that something that the school is, are we required to pay that to the school board members?
That was something that was voted on and added several years ago. A salary for the school board have always been paid people as is the selectmen. And that was increased several years ago.
Is that done through a town warrant article or a school warrant article?
Done through a school warrant article.
So is that something we can undo this year then?
I don't know.
I mean, is it like a contract where we can't do it for a number of years, or is it something where we can just throw a warrant article in and get rid of that?
I do not believe there's a contract associated with that.
We would have to bring that to the school board to look at, and they can make their decision on that.
Well, I know what they're gonna say. But I mean, maybe does it specify? Sandra, do you remember if the thing specifies an amount? Can we could reduce that to $1, and there's technically still getting paid.
I believe that when it was passed, it specified amount because I believe it was the same year that the select board people were granted a level of increase or paid. But it was a number of years ago, so I don't remember the details.
Or maybe we could tie it to being able to keep the budget under control. All right, let's continue.
So that into the school board line. Underneath that, the school board secretaries and the treasurer, et cetera. I think there was a question a little bit, the last one on the GASB 45 compliance. These are the accounting reports that we do for the state. And this was again, an increase that we had to bear.
Then I'm not sure if your latest number shows this or not. Your district assessment, so it would be line 274, which is your SAU district assessment. That is the cost for your SAU services this year, based on the fact that we did lose one of our districts who is withdrawing, and based on the withdrawal, you went from 3 districts paying the fee down to 2. There was a decrease to the overall budget of the SAU, but even with that decrease, it still shows an increase on the contribution that Nottingham has to spend based on town evaluation assessment and per pupil, your pupil daily attendance. So that is $657,969.93 for your SAU cost. That SAU cost covers your student services department, it covers your business department, and it covers your superintendent services.
I'm sorry, Nate, what is the proposed budget for that?
$657,969.93. That is an increase of $163,985 for a total change of 33.2%.
Okay.
not
for us to
Because
go into our own.
670, right, it's a different number in our packet.
Yeah.
So can you repeat that again, please?
That is
number-
that's the number that I have. What number do you have?
I've highlighted
I
it here,
actually-
Nate.
Okay, let me go on yours.
674, 519.27.
I'm sorry, that is correct. That's based on the latest vote. The latest vote increasing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do 2 different budgets. So I'm looking at, that is the 674. They had increased the percentage by $30,000. I think we spoke about this too, due to absences. What it is you have to pay for the contractual obligation if someone is leaving, and their paid absences if they leave and they still have vacation days left, or if we have to remove someone because they so it's an accrued absence thing. If we start losing staff or anything of that nature due to the downshift, they put in a safety factor of that $30,000, and then that increased your budget by 55% of the $30,000. So that's why you see it at 674, 1927. I'm sorry. I forgot that I switched over to my other screen trying to see your differences. So that is your overall cost, and that is the increase of 36.5%.
Well, that line item reflects 33.3% of the total SAU budget.
No, that line item, the 36.5% is your increase. So I want to
Yeah.
restate the numbers because that line item of 674, 519 and 27 cents, that reflects 55% of the SAU budget. That is what,
55, okay.
yep, that is what that is what, based on your town evaluation and your ADM, that is the number that Nottingham is responsible for. It's just a little over 55%.
55.
Has that percent changed?
It has changed. It has changed because you lost a district.
Okay.
Because you now lost a district, you were 3 districts and now you're down to 2. Yeah, your percentage obligation has increased.
Yeah.
Thank you for highlighting that, Tim. I'm sorry. I was trying to bounce through 2 different screens. I have my other PDF up trying to show the differences.
I just wanted to add too that there are several positions that are proposed to be eliminated in that budget once Stratford leaves.
And
so
that's
that budget reflects some position eliminations.
Yep, and that's why it did decrease. Like I said, the budget did decrease for your SAU, but unfortunately, there aren't enough decreases that can balance it out. When you go from 3 down to 2, there's still a certain number of things that are required.
Okay, and that ends the SAU and brings us into the office of the principal. And again, we see the same retirement, salary, benefit costs, etc. Insurance.
Are all these things contractually fixed as well?
Yes. We have the copier lease maintenance agreement. I think I explained that last time, and you know, there is a savings there, and we're hoping to see another savings as we go into carry out even 4 and 5 years with these current copiers.
Chris, I noticed telephones is still on here is $6,000. I would recommend you get in touch with whoever's running the library, because I noticed that they're paying the lowest cost per phone line in any department in town. So there could be a substantial savings there.
Sure. Any other questions in that section?
I just have one question. Line 296, course reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
Your history is only showing at the most 2,500, and you're asking for 9,000.
Right.
How does that whole account work?
That's contractual, so it's in the contract that we are eligible to take classes up to the UNH amount. That's for myself and the assistant principal. And I just finished my CAGS degree, my superintendent certification this past year, but I was able to write a grant for over $30,000 that paid for that. So it didn't have to come out of the taxpayer funds over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, myself, our curriculum director, you also would see the same in his lines, and the assistant principal, we're trying to find other ways or classes and things that are more affordable for us to take. Part of the associations that we join also helps us offset some of the costs. So that's, while that money is in there and we do take advantage of workshops and courses, we try not to pass that on to the district as often as we can, thinking that would be money that we could return to the district later. But that is, like I said, it is contractual, and certainly if we need to access it, and if I need to, you know, take a course, it's there for us. Any other questions in this line or in this section?
The other printing that's on here on line 305, is that like through WB Mason, like for paper and stuff, for ink, or?
That printing largely would be for things that we print, like our student handbooks. While our 6-8 materials have really shifted into more online as we've gone to the one-to-one, particularly grade 7-8, because they take their Chromebooks home. We still print handbooks for the younger kids. And then we'll purchase some other things that we go through a printing company for. And that would be, say, diplomas and things like that too, if we need it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Michelle. All right, the line after the section after that is our section of one line, and that's our school district bookkeeper salary, which is still $1. We level funded that. Little levity, no, bad, yeah, not good. The next section is our facilities. And at the top, you'll see our facilities directors and our custodial salaries and the corresponding retirement, FICA, dental health, et cetera, benefit lines. You'll notice on our facilities director's salary that it's a 6% wage adjustment. That's actually because there's a 3% wage adjustment this year that it needs to be reflected. And then the additional 3% wage increase, should that come to pass the next year in this budget year.
And I think there was a question about for line 316 custodial salaries. Somebody had asked last time how many other custodians. So there's 3 plus the facilities director, right?
Yeah. And that goes in line with the request they earlier made to
Yeah, I
explain these
marked
lines.
it. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
I think I made the comment that I was surprised that there was a facilities director for one building. I think in most school districts, they have a lead custodial person, and the rest of them are just staff members, and they pretty much take care of all the needs of, within the school.
Well, in how our system works, Tom, is similar probably to what you're describing, in the sense that our maintenance director, our facilities director, is our full-time custodian during the day. So he works alone during the day. And
Okay.
then we have, there is a small overlap, an hour or so in the afternoon for one of our other custodians to come in. And then we have nighttime shifts as well. So he does all of our contacting vendors and creating the budget and negotiating the contracts around, and he does a lot of the equipment repairs as well. We're also very, very thankful that he has some certifications in water testing, so he's able to negotiate around some of the state assessments and understand what we need to keep arsenic levels low, et cetera.
So his expertise is much higher than the other people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're actually, I know our school board feels the same way as all of our staff members. We have a great custodial staff, and our building looks wonderful. We just had someone come in and do a study on our air quality, and they remarked at how clean not only our building was, but our HVAC system as well. And these folks work really hard. Some of the other expenses in this line, in the section you'll see, is our rubbish removal. We talked about that before, and it's just due to increased costs from the company end. I think, again, COVID has given some buildings and some businesses rather a need to increase their costs or a desire to increase their costs.
Have you talked at all with the town building people and the recycling center people? There was some talk about possibly everybody
did.
combining.
I did reach out to them, and they're in the middle of a contract And that we were going to look into see when that gets up if we could work together, but they can't get out of it right now.
I had a question about line, what is it? 342, new equipment and fixtures.
Mhm.
In there you have 1440 for a storage container. Is this one of the big, like, 40-foot shipping container type things?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great price. Are you guys still having storage issues? I remember when you did the presentation, maybe might even be 2 years ago at this point, on the need for the new addition. There was a lot of talk about that there was, overflowing of storage, and there was a lot of need for more storage in the building, or that there was storage in rooms that need to be used for other things.
Yes, we still have storage issues. A lot of this new storage in container was because we tried to clear out even more space due to COVID-19 so we could separate students and have
So
more
I think
space.
for the first time ever, you'll hear me say, should you maybe budget more money to purchase more shipping containers to solve the storage problem?
Well, one of the
I mean,
things
there's
we're
plenty
looking at,
of room to put them.
we're looking at is the whole proposal for the school improvement. And right now, the storage closets are being used for classroom space or education space. And that's one of the things that you'll be hearing about on the 29th.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can get these things for $14.40, I'll tell you that's a great price. So you might want to pick up a few extra to solve your storage issues and possibly keep them from coming up again in the future.
Well, no, I'll credit that to our facilities manager too, who he's been doing this for a long time and knows a lot of folks, and he's done a great job for us in those regard, trying to save some money. Under new furniture, you see, and replacement equipment, etc. That line ends up with the last one was replacement of furniture. And is there any questions in that section? Any other questions? Underneath that, we have care of ground or ground maintenance. And we did reduce the ground repairs. We are not going to restripe the parking lot. It's just some things we tightened up on. We do, however, need to replace certain signs for safety. And the biggest thing, of course, the addition here is that the replacing of the wood chips. And that's something to meet state standards we have to do every few years to maintain a certain depth. And we need to do it. The next section is our transportation section. And you'll notice in the agreement that it's still being worked out. I know Carol's working on that a little bit, if I'm correct. We're looking at reducing to the 7 buses from 8. And there, the bus company is looking at a 3% increase across the board, but I know that is something that they're all still negotiating. I believe so. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. We're hoping to bring that back at the next school board meeting, which is beginning of January.
Has the school, I think I asked this last time, has the school been looking at buying how much it would save to buy their own buses and pay their own bus drivers?
When we looked at the last time we went to contract, we had 2 vendors, which is highly unusual. Typically, there's only 1 vendor available. And we did look at costs of buses. I don't think we fully explored the idea that we would operate in our own, but when we looked at the cost of purchasing buses and the driver shortage that we had, it didn't seem feasible for us to move in that direction versus what we were paying for transportation at the time.
One of the vendors last time would have required us to pay a much higher price because they would have basically been making us pay for the buses. They didn't have the fleet. We're also looking at just doing a 1-year extension of the contract and going out to bid again next year.
Next section is special education transportation. And
I know that we spoke to this before. In preparation, I wanted to send out some information to Tim, Mr. Davier. I was wondering if you had a chance to share that out.
I didn't. In the slew of emails yesterday, when did you send it, Nate?
Let me go in. I did pull it up, so I can pull it up. If you want to give me privileges to share, I just want to be very clear on what I'm following, and I don't need to share if you don't want, but I can.
No, I think that would be great because if I didn't see the email, so.
Okay, yeah, no, not a problem. So I just pulled up my sent, and if I have sharing privileges, let me come
I
down
think you
here.
do.
Yeah, it shows now. It's just taking me a second. I want to get right onto what I'm looking for, so I make sure I'm just, because it's my email and I don't want emails that might pop up. I think you should, yep, okay, it's green. So here's what I wanted to share, because there was a question, and I'm just going to go from the top, and we'll get this throughout. I'm not going to read this whole thing for you. It's pretty lengthy. I sent it forward. The question was, could we ask someone to pay for, or could we ask them to reimburse them? And I said that wouldn't be best practice. In some cases that might occur, but that's not something we want to do. One of the things you have to look at is based on IDA, transportation is a related service. Related services are something that we are required to give to our special education students to ensure that they get education. So I can't then say to a parent, hey, by the way, to save the district money, would you be willing to drive your own student and we'll reimburse you? That's not something we should do. If we were in a pinch and couldn't provide any other transportation, it might be something we would look at for a temporary need, but it's not something I should do. And it does fall outside of what FAPE asks for. There's other issues that we would have to look at if we were doing that. One of the issues is you'd have no control over tardy or absenteeism based on the fact that you asked the parent to bring them. So if they're tardy, it's your fault because you've asked the parents to do it. Another thing to consider is the district shall provide the transportation. It doesn't say the district shall provide or offer a means to reimburse. So you get into a little bit of a tricky situation when you're looking at the district shall provide. As I said, this could be something we would look at it as a case-by-case basis if we really had a pinch in not being able to provide busing. And then what I would also like to look at or share is, and I mentioned a couple different things, but we could potentially be liable at this point. If we are requesting a parent to drive a student and they get into a car accident and we requested them to do this, we could be liable for any damages to their vehicle or any injuries that occurred because we've asked them to do it. So that's an issue. One of my largest concerns, and I talk about this and I shared this, and I don't want to go too far into this, but it is, you have the risk of discrimination in here because you are potentially looking at identifying a class of individuals, because what would wind up happening is if you are reimbursing them, they are losing their anonymity on who's getting this. The school board would then know any student who has identified, and the school board should not know identified students. The reason they would know that the students are identified with special education needs or homelessness or any of that situation, which we try to avoid to the best of our ability, is they would be signing checks to parents. And this would take away the students' rights, and you would be divulging information to school board members on minors that they should not have. And then lastly, what you would wind up having, and I strongly believe this, is I believe that OCR, the Office of Civil Rights, would come down and be very aggressive towards the decision to solely search out any students who might have additional costs and ask parents to burden an additional burden. While I understand your question, Tom, originally was this could provide them more time with their family, some parents would look at this as not as a burden to spend time with their students, but it would be that it could potentially look like we're giving them a burden, because if you're talking about number of hours they're in the vehicle, it could potentially limit them from being able to work a normal schedule. So I wanted to put this together because it was asked for me to put it together, and it gives you a pretty quick outline of what's there. I guess that's all I wanted to do.
All right, thanks, Nate. I screenshotted it so I can read it all later.
Yeah,
I did just forward this to everybody too.
Oh, great. Okay, that's
I
even
want
better.
to put that in the minutes as well. So if you can forward it to me, that would be great. Since
yeah, I just sent it to everybody.
Tom, could you just clarify? I thought before when you had asked about this, it wasn't if we ask the people, it was to inform them that they
Yeah, so
They
I'm not
could be.
asking, so yeah, just to clarify, you're saying that you can't ask parents to do it. You can't request that they provide their own transportation or ask that they take a mileage reimbursement. I'm not asking for the school to ask anything of parents or ask if they would be willing to do something. I'm saying that if this mileage reimbursement program exists, if this is an option, then I don't see why it's a problem to notify all parents that it exists. You're simply giving them information. You're not requesting them that they do the thing. You're just telling everybody that this is a possibility. You're not making any request. It's not an ask. It's a, hey, this is the way it works. Because I wonder how many people don't know about this. And then to your second point about if this could, if we give reimbursements to somebody, it could expose their anonymity. Nate, at this point, does anyone in the school get a reimbursement for providing their own travel?
Not at this point right now.
Have they in the past?
I said case by case basis. Yeah, we have.
Yeah, so it's already been the case. So, I mean, if that was such a big concern, then it shouldn't have happened before.
That concern, as I said, was under no other option, not the standout and regular.
I was just thinking too, like if say a parent or even a couple parents did want to get reimbursed and their neighbor who has similar issues still needs transportation at that point, wouldn't we be like doubling up on paying the full amount of transportation and reimbursing some?
Well, we're not required to provide the mileage reimbursement. We're required to give them transportation, right? So in that case, you could say, no, we can't give you the reimbursement. There's too many, there's enough students in your area that we could share them and that would be more efficient. So that's my understanding, is we're not required to provide the reimbursement.
That's still a lot to ask, I think. But
I don't think it's a lot to ask. There's only 60 special ed students?
All
that
with
doesn't seem too hard
different
to...
ranges. Yeah, you're right.
And I'll go back to the fact, like I said to you, it's a related service. If they have specialized transportation, it's a related service. That's it. You go ahead and read that over. I gave you the rules. I'll let you look that over. And I want to apologize if I misunderstood what you had said the last time. That's not how I took it. I took it as the statement of asking them, anyone, not just giving them the information. But I'll go back to the fact that whether we ask them or we allow them, we assume some liability, and it's not something I'd want to put the district at exposure to on a regular basis.
So that being said,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are there any ideas or thoughts around reducing this cost in this particular line item, or how to do that, or different? It says ride sharing is reduced, but I'm trying to understand that. My kids are riding the bus, and
okay,
there's a kid on either side of them, so I'm not sure how it would be any different in a
van in this. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you're done. It's hard when the screen blinks on yellow and not. So rideshare loss, when we're looking at special education student, what we're looking at an out-of-district placement. So on an out-of-district placement, we might be sending one student in a smaller bus, one student to a different location. So if we lose the rideshare, what it means is some other district might also be sending a student that is nearby us, whether it be Northwood, Stratford, Rochester, Dover, that might be along the way, and we can share the cost of that transportation. Okay, so if we lose a ride share, which I know we lost a ride share this year due to COVID, I have to budget that way. So when we are looking at how do we reduce this, we do a very good job at the SAU of reaching out to districts around us, say, do you have any students going to this school? Would you be interested in a ride share to lower your costs and our costs? And we do that on a regular basis. So there are ways to do it. But as of right now, based on where we're at in the situation, I can't with good conscience say, yes, we're going to have it. I do believe that the following year, this number will go back down. I just think that as of right now, I can't do it. Did that answer your question, Jim?
Yes, it did. Thanks.
Yeah.
Underneath special education transportation, we have other lines around transportation as well. Athletic, field trips, homeless, which we have nothing in there at this point in time. And that is our school operations total at the bottom of that, which you see.
So I noticed field trips went up. Is there reasons for that?
those are numbers that we got from the bus company as far as the related costs, fuel, mileage, et cetera, salaries.
Are the field trips a contractual thing? Or are they touchable?
They're not contractual, yes.
Okay.
So the total budget here, 1,364,296.71 above the previous budget, an 8.7% increase. Again, looking at this, $989,788 are due to the increase in our SAU costs, high school tuition costs, high school special education paraprofessionals, special education transportation, our preschool costs, and our retirement costs. So almost $1 million just for that. And of course, you look at salaries and other contractual issues around for the remainder.
So Chris, earlier this year, or this month, sorry, earlier this month, Monica showed us the first draft of the proposed budget, and the total budget increase was 7.5%. And it's unfortunate that Monica is not here tonight, because she kind of told us that the school board's or the school administration's goal was to get that budget increase down to 4%. So it was quite a shock when I opened this binder and the proposed budget is now 8.7%. Whatever happened to trying to lower the budget increase down to only 4% increase this year?
And no, I believe me, I think we were all quite shocked when we saw the numbers coming in, and of course we're seeing them trickle in and grow, and it was very frustrating at times. I'm not quite sure where that came from overall, but I know there was discussion. I think there was a misinterpretation perhaps of that 4% piece. We typically try to bring a budget in around 4%, 3 to 4% overall total, and most of our budgets in the past have been that. I think when I had a 5% budget, I thought that was high. So this was very high for what we would normally do over the past several years. And I think at the last budget that we discussed, that was a 7.6, I think you mentioned, we didn't have a lot of our data in there. We had spent the previous budget meeting focusing on our default numbers, and we hadn't quite finished and plugged in all the numbers to the proposed budget. So we were still hopeful that we were going to be able to have a much lower number in the end. But as I mentioned, having those costs come in when we started putting together the tuition and the retirement costs, those are pretty big ticket items. And then of course the SAU shift happened at a later date when the joint board met and had to look at that. So things kind of came rolling in, and we didn't get the final numbers probably until I think it was December 8th and then at the 10th. And this is from the 11th.
And Monica did email me last week, and I can forward that email to the entire board. I thought, I was just thinking she was going to be here tonight, but she misspoke, and she admitted that she misspoke on that 4%, Tom. She was driving back from, I can't remember where she was. I think she was in Atlanta, and she was on the phone during the budget call with the school board and the administration, and she thought she heard something, but she admits that she totally misspoke to the budget committee when saying that the goal was to bring the budget down to a 4% increase.
Okay, I thought it said 4% on her slides too. I thought that was.
Yeah, she misspoke.
That's what I'm saying, Tom. Whatever, when she had said that, it was not accurate information. And I'll forward the email that she sent to me last week to everybody, so you all have it. But she takes ownership over the fact that was not something that the school board or the administration had presented or what their goal was at that meeting.
I think the goal was to get it lower than this, but we can't because there's nowhere else to cut.
Well, I think we've identified tonight there's plenty of places that are still possible to cut that aren't protected by contracts, and there's there's things that the school can do to lower salaries and stuff by eliminating positions that is not protected by a contract. So there's always places that things can be cut. It's just a question of who's willing to go ahead and make the really hard decisions. And so, I mean, let's pretend for a moment that, because we all, we know the way this works. You have, a budget here that's $14.7 million. and you divide that up by the tax base, and that turns out the correct tax rate to get you your $14.7 million, which if you divide that by the roughly like 1,900 or so households in town is almost $8,000 per household. So let's pretend for a minute that it doesn't operate like taxes. And let's pretend for a minute that this was something, a business. You have to run this like a business where you actually have to, get your budget where it's supposed to be. Chris, what would you cut? What could you cut to make a significant cut here? Because, I mean, you got a 1.3, almost $1.4 million budget increase, and it just keeps going up. And I'm just wondering, if you were forced to make a really hard decision to get this down to, say, a flat budget with no increase, or do as the town did. The town managed to, they have a lot of the same challenges with the retirement system increases and things like that, and cost increases with COVID and stuff. But the town worked really hard with the department heads, and they turned in a proposed budget to us that was a 2% increase, which is the rate of inflation. So that's a reasonable tax increase. That's something that can be absorbed. And if you do a 2% every year, it's going to produce a flat tax rate, and people are going to be able to absorb that. But the school's been turning in 8% increases for years. I mean, it is up. It's almost doubled, I would say, in the last maybe 12 years. And, there might need to be some hard choices made here. And so, if you wanted to get this down to a 2% tax increase, you'd have to cut about $1 million off this budget. And I'm just wondering, where would you choose? Where would you think you can cut $1 million off this budget?
A couple of things. I think if you noticed, with all the lines that we have discretionary spending lines, you'll notice most of them have been cut and reduced. The K-8 budget that we do to operate our building is fairly lean, and I haven't done the percentages out there, but I would expect it to be around that 2% line. And we take a lot of responsibility and a lot of pride in paying attention to being fiscally responsive when my staff builds their budgets moving forward. So we completely respect that. To that end, we haven't had 8% increases every single year. The budget does not go up that much. This was a shock. This is a rather unusual year, and I think unfortunately we're going to see some of these spikes coming up because of the tuition costs and those sunk costs around retirement, healthcare, et cetera. So this is certainly something I think we need to get it together and brainstorm on as how we want to address this moving forward. I don't think there's anything here that I would cut if we wanted to maintain the current educational programs that we have. That's why we're presenting this budget tonight.
So I guess I misspoke when I said 8%. So last year's budget was a 7.6% budget increase over the year before that. And the year before that was a 6.6% budget increase. So yeah, it's not 8%, but I mean, it's pretty close. It's still triple to almost quadruple the inflation rate. And this is not a new trend. I mean, we could go look at the tax rate graph for Nottingham. It's, it's doubled in about 11, 12 years or something like that. Whereas if it was pacing with the rate of inflation, it would be roughly flat as the tax base increases.
I'd like to say that if you didn't see the increase in the retirement costs, if you would have backed that out, you would see an increase overall that would probably be less than 7% easily.
Right, but we can't just
we have no control.
Sure,
we have no
but
control of that.
Well, you don't have control over the retirement increase, but you still have control over spending. You can't just throw your hands in the air and go, well, one thing increased in cost, so there's nothing we can do. If you were to run a business and you needed to come in at a certain budget, if the price of thing number A goes up, then you have to figure out how to spend less money, and that means cutting things C or B or D. And so, I mean, something needs to be cut. And you say that there's a lot of things that are untouchable because of union contracts and whatnot. But I think we kind of had this discussion in an earlier meeting. Well, even though the salaries and everything are protected by these union contracts, the union contract doesn't protect against a change in staff levels. So if staff levels were reduced, then the salary number would go down, and that might be a potential way to balance the budget. And I think as we were going through here tonight, we identified at least maybe $400,000, $500,000 in things that are not contractually required, not to mention there's probably about $40,000 or $50,000 in extracurricular activities and Lego clubs and video game clubs and skiing instructors and cheerleading things that are not critical to educating students, that could be cut. And I'm not here to say, exactly what things need to be cut, but I think, as a budget committee, we have a responsibility to be a fiscal watchdog for the taxpayers and to ask of you to turn in a budget that is not quadruple the inflation rate. I think the most respectful thing you could do to the taxpayers is try to keep your budget increases at the inflation rate at a max. Whereas for the last many years, it has been far beyond the inflation rate. I mean, every year in this town, it seems to be, a $300 to $500 tax increase. This type of tax increase is not sustainable. This is not a trend that can continue. It'll price people out of their homes. So, I mean, I would like to know what, you could reduce. I'm just very curious, what you would reduce if you had to. If someone said, your budget will be 2% increase, what would you do?
Yeah, I just want to, Tom, you kind of belabor this point at each meeting, and I understand your passion about reducing the expenses, and you proposed they come up with an alternative budget with a decrease of 1% or flat, and it was put as a motion, it was voted down by the budget committee. I feel like you're kind of just going on and on here about the same point, belaboring the same point. We all get it, Tom, but at this point, they presented the draft of the budget. You asked last time if the budget committee would like to request of them to present a second or a third type of draft with those reductions. I don't feel it's responsible to put Chris on the spot right now and say, hey, reduce stuff right now. What would you reduce to hold them responsible to those numbers? We voted not to have him do that. And I think we need to move on in this meeting and stop belaboring your point of reduce everything by $400,000. So
I mean, I hate to belabor the point, but this is kind of the core responsibility of the budget committee, is it not? To be a fiscal watchdog and control spending and make sure that budgets do not increase beyond
we do not
the rate that taxpayers can bear?
No, the budget committee does not control spending, Tom. The budget committee is responsible for looking at the taxes and making sure that they're being spent in an appropriate manner. That is the role of the budget committee. We hire professionals, which would be the principal, the SAU staff, to present to us the expenditures that they need to do their jobs. Our role is not to tell them how to do their jobs, what to cut, how to run their departments. That's not our role. So they've presented the budget. We've had an opportunity to comment on it. They can present another version at our meeting on December 29th. We can review that, but I would expect us not to keep saying that they need to reduce things to 0 or tell us what they would reduce to bring it to 1. They've presented this version, Tom. They've gone through it. They've had 3-4 meetings since our last meeting to discuss it. I would like to move on.
So Tim, before, and I agree we could move on. I would just can I show you some notes real quick? Based on things that some notes that I took and research that I did based on what we learned at the training event a few months ago. Can I show those real quick?
If you could send them in an email to us, Tom, and then we can review them at our next meeting, that would be fine.
I would like to just share my screen. I have 3 or so slides here, PowerPoint slides that talk about the New Hampshire Supreme Court case that is, I think, quite applicable to our current situation. It's Brentwood School District versus Brentwood Budget Committee. It's from 2015, and I think it really has a lot of relevance to the discussion that what you just said about budget committee's role and things like that. And I think it's something that we kind of have a responsibility to think over a little bit.
Yep. Again, Tom, if you could email those to us, and I think everybody can do their research on that case, because I know a lot of us are familiar with that case. But at this point, I'd like to move on from that, and we can talk about it at our meeting on the 29th.
Well, I don't need to share the whole screen. Let me just go over it real quick then. So the Brentwood School District. So instead of putting together a line item budget, the Brentwood Budget Committee, they proposed a bottom line figure. So that bottom line figure represented the school board's proposed budget, but the budget committee of Brentwood reduced that budget by a flat $650,000. And the budget committee did not specify where those cuts were supposed to come from. They simply said that the school district would have to decide exactly what needed to be cut to come up with that budget that was $650,000 less than what was proposed. And the Brentwood School Board kind of sued in Rockingham Superior Court, and they argued in court that the budget committee, arbitrarily cut the school's budget without specifying line items to cut. The school board also argued that the committee never voted in a public hearing on which line items from the cuts were supposed to be made. Now, the judge in this case at Rockingham Superior Court sided with the budget committee. The judge determined that the budget committee had satisfied all procedural requirements, and the judge specifically said that the budget committee's role is that of a, quote, fiscal watchdog, and that a budget committee certainly can seek to make budget cuts that result in a more manageable budget for taxpayers. So whereas the school budget has ballooned out of control far beyond the rate of inflation for many years now, our nation's in the middle of an unprecedented economic crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is destroying businesses and costing residents their jobs. I think as the budget committee, we really do have a responsibility to the taxpayers of Nottingham to control spending and to prevent budget increases from pricing residents out of their homes. So, I mean, with that, I will say that I propose that as the budget committee, we direct the school administration to submit a proposed budget for this next financial year with no total budget increase over the current budget. And we as the budget committee, we're not required to specify where those cuts are going to come from. We can just say that the school needs to turn in a budget that's a particular number. And we can let the school administration decide what needs to be cut. So they alone are going to be the ones that are responsible for their decisions about what to cut. We as the budget committee would not be cutting their budget. We would be demanding that it doesn't increase further. So if you're worried about cutting the school budget and what people are going to think about that, we're not cutting the budget. We're just saying you can't increase it this year. So I would say to the other committee members, I would really ask that you stand up for the taxpayers of Nottingham and give everybody a really much needed bit of good news in this terrible year, which would be that you're not going to get a tax hike next year.
Yeah. Okay. So Tom, would you like to make the motion? Then you made a proposal, but that's not a formal motion.
Well, I don't want to make the proposal yet. I would like to have a little discussion. I mean, is that something people would be interested in?
No.
No. What about capping the school's budget at a 2% increase? So that would be in keeping with the inflation rate in this country that the town of Nottingham has managed to turn in a proposed budget that's a 2% increase, and they've been dealing with a lot of the same challenges with the state retirement system and the increase in costs due to COVID. I don't think it's unreasonable to say to the school that after years of increasing the budget 6 to 8% a year, that we ask for 1 year that they keep the budget at a 2% increase in keeping with inflation.
That's already been determined as quite impossible given all the contractual things there, and you know that.
It's not impossible. We asked before, and they said that they can't reduce people's salary. They can cut staffing levels, and that would reduce salary levels. And we've identified hundreds of thousands of dollars of line items tonight that are not contractually protected, things that can be cut. And we don't have to make the hard decisions about what to cut. We don't have to go in here and say, fire this person or cut that after school program, cut out after. We don't have to say any of that. As the budget committee, all we have to do is say, you need to give us a budget that's this amount. This is the spending increase that we think the taxpayers can bear. We can say, we would like to see this budget have a 2% increase. That is absolutely allowed. The court case that I presented says that that's absolutely allowed. The judge agreed that that is the role of the budget committee, to be a fiscal watchdog and to control spending increases. And I would really love to see a budget committee stand up for the taxpayers of Nottingham and say, no, you can't do an 8 whatever budget increase again after a year where it went up by 7.6%, and the year before that it went up by 6.6%, and so on. It's increasing out of control, and the budget committee, I feel, really has a responsibility to the people of Nottingham to stand up and say, keep the budget increases at the rate of inflation. And the school can figure out how to do it. They can make the hard decisions and defend them. We as the budget committee, we just stand up for the taxpayers of Nottingham. So with that, I propose that the budget committee ask the school to turn in a proposed budget that represents a 2% increase over last year's budget, and they can figure out how to cut that.
I'm just curious whether or not this is the year for that. I mean, if that is the trend at this percentage increase, how does the budget committee see that, or other members that have been on longer? How does that kind of land with what tax increases would do moving forward if budgets continue at a 5%, let's just call it a 5% increase even, into the future? I know it's hypothetical, but just kind of curious if it keeps clicking off at that percentage. I mean, Tom is very passionate, but I understand his point.
I mean, we've all studied compounding interest, right? If you have a 6.6% tax increase 2 years ago, and then last year you have a 7.6% tax increase, and this year you're proposing a 8 whatever tax increase, those all compound. You are now asking for, well over $1,000 more from everyone in town than you were 2 or 3 years ago. That's a significant amount of money. That's going to price people out of their homes. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers in Nottingham to control budget increases. And all I'm asking is that we ask the school to do the same thing that the town did and control their budget increase to 2%, which is the rate of inflation.
So again, Tom, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'm making a motion that we as the budget committee request that the school turn in a budget that is a 2% budget increase over last year maximum.
Is there a second? There's no second to your motion, Tom?
Okay. Well, have fun answering to the voters in Nottingham when the taxes go up again.
Are there any more questions for Chris or Nate on the school proposed budget?
I just want to point out that we didn't really review food service, but if you take a look at that, so that the final total was the 8.6% increase.
That's a combination of the school and the food?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, so food actually didn't, 0.6% increase for food overall. Nice.
Tim, I just wanted to point out that the 2021 budget that was presented the last time, the bottom line was quite a bit higher than it is tonight on the newest budget. And what was in the last one was all the 52, 51 accounts, which were the capital reserves, and the library warrant, no, not the library, the construction services of 97,000. If you back those out, that's how you got to the number that's now in there for 2020, 21. And that's why the percent numbers changed for an increase. It would have been 9% if that correct number had been in there for 2021. And so it was reduced by 0.4% from the last presentation to 8.6%. I just wanted to make that clear.
All right. So thank you. Any more questions for Chris and Nate? All right, so Chris, are you and Nate, are you both going to be at the meeting on the 29th, or is it just going to be Monica?
I'll pull my calendar up now. I had not been asked to be there. Let me pull my calendar up.
The 29th of December?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
sorry.
Tuesday.
It would be
Yeah.
nice if as many
Yeah.
people as possible could be there, as there will be a lot of questions and a lot of things are going to be coming up and being discussed again, including the proposed school. So that as many people as could be there that have been a part of those discussions, it would be helpful.
Yeah, I have every intention. I've always enjoyed meeting with the budget committee. Usually we've been pretty good about scheduling these things ahead of time. This year, certainly the scheduling seems to have gotten away from us. But yeah, I've just marked it down on my calendar, so we're good.
Sorry, I do have one other question on something that wasn't on this budget and curious if it's going to be carried in the facilities costs. Is any incidental costs based around construction carryover or cleanup or any safety related items with potential construction of the new portions of the school?
We haven't added any of that into this budget and have no intention to at this point in time.
Well, are those, sorry, so my question is, are those costs accounted for somewhere in either the construction facilities cost? And if they're not, I just think it's an item that is lacking and that will more than likely incur costs if that gets built.
Yeah, I think that would be included in the bond discussion.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Nate and Chris.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you on Tuesday, the 29th. If not, Nate, have a happy new year.
Okay,
Have a
thank
great
you.
Christmas.
Thank you. Happy holidays,
Thanks.
everybody. Happy New Year.
I will
Merry
I will
Christmas.
definitely
Yep.
try to be there. I'll definitely try to be there. I put it in my calendar as well.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Merry Christmas.
Yep, happy holidays.
Happy
Happy
holidays. Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
So our meeting for the 29th then is going to be a pretty big agenda because we're going to be reviewing that warrant article or the bond, warrant article for the bond and the school build, as well as the default budget with those changes. And Carol, I know you had emailed all of those follow-up items that we had for the default budget to Monica to follow up on. So I'm hoping we can go through those items at that meeting.
Yeah, I think several of them are already covered in the proposed.
Yeah.
But we can go.
And that's the 22nd, a Tuesday.
No, the 29th.
Okay. Because I got an email that we finally have a CIP meeting on Tuesday, the 22nd. But don't we have a budget committee meeting that day too? No.
No, just the 29th.
Okay. Well, I'll be ready to give you feedback.
Great. Does anybody have anything else for our meeting? I think we do have minutes to approve from December 10th
And the first.
and the 1st.
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes from December 1st.
Was the motion for both of them?
I figured I'd do one at a time. Want me to do both? Would that be easier?
It's the same difference to me.
I think we'll do one at a time. So we'll do the first, John.
Yep. All right. So I make a motion that we approve the minutes from December 1st.
I second it.
All in favor? I'll go down the list. Tom Bukovitz.
Aye.
Do we want to have, is there any discussion first, just to make sure that
Sorry, any discussion on the
nobody
minutes?
has discussion?
So John Decker, you
Okay.
made the motion.
Aye.
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 Sandra,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Tom LeVay,
Yes,
Carol,
I'll abstain.
John Moore,
Yes.
and Jim Stevens.
Yes.
All right, approved. So how about the December 10th minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from December 10th.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so all in favor. Tom Bukovitz, you seconded. John Decker, you made the motion. I say aye.
Yep.
Sandra?
Yeah.
Michelle?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Tom LeVey?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
John Warren?
Yes.
And Jim Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you.
I say yes too.
You did. I'm sorry, Sandra. I thought you did.
No, I didn't. You didn't ask me.
Any other updates?
I guess I'll just mention that we're discussing the format for a deliberative session because under the COVID bill, there's an option to do a virtual version of it, but it's much more complicated. And I know the town is looking at that as well. So we're going to try to coordinate with the town to the extent that we can, but we also have to have a hearing on the bond for the building as well. So there's a number of hearings and dates and deadlines coming up in January.
So Carol, I thought the deliberative was going to be in person.
And right now it's scheduled for a date in person. There is a way to do it in a virtual format, but it's a lot more complicated.
Okay.
And it's up to the governing body. So the select board can decide for their deliberative and the school board can decide for our deliberative.
Okay.
We had that discussion on Monday night's meeting with Bonnie and some other people too about the deliberative session and how we're going to handle it. We're not opposed yet of having it totally done. I mean, we're not opposed to doing it remote, but there's a lot of people that still want to see it done in person. So the discussion rages on. There's no decision that's been made yet.
We'll be discussing it at the next school board meeting. One of the complications for us is that the deliberative is on a school night. So then the building needs to be cleaned, or the portion of the building being used needs to be cleaned after the deliberative ends before we can have school the next day.
When is that school bond hearing?
I don't think that has been set yet.
Okay.
Has the final price been given by the construction manager for that yet?
Sandra might know better than I do, but I don't think so because
No, it has not. And that is one reason that they chose not to be here tonight is that they did not have final numbers for us. And so that's the reason that they're coming the 29th as opposed to tonight, because the final numbers are not still there.
Are there updated drawings that show those changes and so forth somewhere that can be looked at this time, or?
They're working on a website that's going to have all of those things available, and I'm not sure it's not up yet because that isn't completed yet, but all of that will be set and ready to go by the 29th.
There's a couple of classrooms that they're looking at removing from the plans to reduce the cost.
Yeah, the two floor turrets there on the two-story additions, I guess.
Right, those things are being looked at and doing something different and moving the music room down to having a one-story addition and having it be away from the other classrooms, and all of that it will be explained in detail on the website, including maps and designs showing the way things are now and where the crowding is now and what the proposed changes will be. And that is something the committee has spent a considerable amount of time really going over and looking at and really hearing the cost issues and what going forward is something that we need to do. And also worrying, concern, balancing those concerns with, will we be faced with this need for expansion sooner than we would otherwise? And so those are things that are looking at, really still looking at a two-pronged place.
And that, sorry, when do you think that website will be launched, Sandra?
By the 29th, I'm sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have to reach out to Sue Levinson, Jim, anyway, to confirm her for that meeting. And I want to, with Christmas next week, I'm hoping that she can get us any materials ahead of time, like we've been trying to get for all of our meetings. That way we're not just looking at everything for the first time on that Tuesday evening.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? All right, could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion
I'll
to
second.
adjourn tonight's meeting.
Sandra, did you second?
I did.
Any discussion on closing the meeting this evening?
I think we should talk till morning. It's just such fun.
Almost there. All in favor, Tom Bukovitz?
Aye.
John Decky, you forward.
Aye.
Say aye. Sandra?
Hi.
Michelle?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Tom? LeVey?
Aye. Aye,
Carol?
aye, aye.
Aye. Yes.
John? John Moore? You're on mute.
Sorry,
Okay, thanks. Jim Stevens.
Aye.
All right, thanks very much, everyone. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you on the 29th.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays,
Thank you guys.
everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. Night.
Christmas.
Right.